Lots of other cities around Europe have built extensive tram networks outside their city centres. However, unlike most other European cities, London never really built a ton of trams. We just have the one down in Croydon. And instead of trams, we have a network of express buses, the Superloop. But what if I told you that one of the Superloop bus routes was almost a tram? Back in the early 1900s, like every city ever, London had an extensive network of suspiciously bus-looking trams that went almost everywhere, except Kensington and Chelsea. However, following the First World War, there wasn't exactly a lot of money lying around to maintain tram tracks, and following the exciting new invention of the motor vehicle, these got torn up and replaced with suspiciously tram-looking buses, which then got replaced with boring or normal buses once diesel engines became actually usable. And that was then the end of trams in London. Until the early 2000s, when trams made a return to London down in Croydon. The tram took over several lightly used and abandoned railway lines in South London, with some short street running in Croydon town centre to link it all up. It was able to provide a frequent and modern service to a quickly growing area, and it was a big success. So it wasn't long before ideas about putting trams in other parts of London started appearing. Uxbridge Road runs from Shepherd's Bush out west to, Uxbridge. Could they really not have come up with a better name for the road? And this is a very, very busy bus corridor, with 3 dedicated bus routes that run exclusively on the road, in addition to many other routes, serving Shepherd's Bush, Acton, Ealing, West Ealing, Hanwell, Salwell, Hayes, Hillingdon and Uxbridge. A very busy bus corridor, following one relatively straight road, seems like the perfect place for a tram, no? So in 2002, the West London Tram was proposed, along with some other projects like the Cross River Tram and the Thames Gateway Bus Rapid Transit, but those are videos for another time. If you don't want to miss them and want to help support the channel, make sure to subscribe. And if you want to help pay for bus and train tickets, you can become a channel member and get your name on screen right here. Right, back to Uxbridge Road. The West London Tram was proposed in 2002 and would have run the length of this road from Shepherd's Bush to Uxbridge, quite similar to the original tram Route 7 from the early 1900s. This tram would have replaced 3 of London's busiest bus routes, the 207, 427 and 607. It was forecast that the tramway would carry 50 million passengers a year, and that 19% of those passengers would be switching from cars to the tram, rather than from existing buses to the tram. At least according to research done on the Croydon tram, the scheme was expected to cost £200 million and would open by 2009. Yeah, it doesn't look like that happened. The idea of building this tram wasn't exactly popular, with opinions very divided, but for such a busy and congested bus corridor, how could you not want a tram? Modern trams have much more capacity, are smoother and more pleasant to ride in, actually have lower operating costs than a bus in the long term. The main issues brought up with the proposed tram were mainly around the fact that in places, Uxbridge Road just isn't super wide. While out west, the road's definitely built with plenty of space, with this wide, grassy median, there are plenty of sections of the road that are much slower and much more congested. In places, there just wouldn't be enough space for 2 lanes of traffic and 2 tram tracks. Like, even in some places, there's barely enough space for 2 traffic lanes. This would mean that for a lot of the eastern part of the route, trams would share the road with everyone else and be subject to the same traffic and delays as the current buses. It was also feared that having trams here would cause increased congestion, as trams supposedly take up a lot of space on the road, although are trams that much bigger than a bus? The ridership numbers and projections for how many people would choose the tram over driving were also questioned, as they were based on studies on the Croydon tram, which was a very different tram line from what was being proposed here. The Croydon tram runs almost entirely on old railway lines, meaning it's isolated from traffic and can maintain high speeds, just like a normal train. However, it still has the on-street convenience of a bus, making it a very competitive way to get around. Whereas the West London tram would be on the street or on the alignment of the street for almost its entire route, meaning it would need to deal with other traffic and stop at every intersection along the road. This would mean that the West London tram would be a lot less convincing for drivers to take compared to the Croydon tram, because it just wouldn't be all that much faster. In 2004, public consultations were held to see what people thought about the idea of building a tram here.
And although 54% of people thought that reducing congestion was needed, 59% of people opposed a tram. And 9% of people thought that trams would be too loud. Like, have you ever seen a tram before? You think it's louder than that? Despite there being a few more consultations, it was pretty clear that the idea of a tram on Uxbridge Road was a tough sell, and in 2007 the scheme was postponed indefinitely.
With the money being spent on the Crossrail project instead, which is now the very successful Elizabeth line. While this did improve connections between places like Hayes, Southall and Ealing, the issue of congestion and crowded buses on Uxbridge Road hasn't gone away, and if anything it's getting worse. There's huge amounts of development happening in the area thanks to the new Elizabeth line service, which means more people and more businesses are moving onto the corridor.
So without a tram, it was clear that something was going to need to be done to improve the buses on this road.
And that brings us to 2023, when the Superloop came to Uxbridge Road. The limited stop 607 bus was rebranded as the SL8. Shortly after the 607 got Superloopified, its hours were extended, and quite recently the frequency was increased from every 10 minutes to every 8 minutes. But while improved frequency and good branding are great things to have, they don't really address the underlying issues of this bus corridor. Buses still sit in traffic, junctions take forever to get through, and there's a concerning amount of temporary traffic lights. Because no matter how many buses you throw at the problem, journey times and crowding won't improve unless you change something fundamental about the road itself. So if a tram isn't the right solution for this corridor, what can be done? How can we get the speed and capacity of a tram, but keep the flexibility and simplicity of a bus? This is a guided busway. It's as close to a tram as you can get without actually building a tram, which is why several cities in Britain have built these in places where they didn't feel like paying for a tram. But despite the fact that busways appear in places where we're being too cheap for a tram, they do have some very useful features. Buses can make weird detours to serve areas off the main corridor. All buses on the road will benefit, not just the ones running the whole length of the road, and more importantly, buses get a speed boost and improved reliability as they're separated from general traffic.
But the most important thing for Uxbridge Road specifically is that the busway can have short breaks in its infrastructure in places where the road may be too narrow.
Busways also have a big advantage over normal bus lanes because other cars and vans physically cannot drive or park in them. A real issue with some of the existing bus lanes on Uxbridge Road. So a busway seems like a pretty effective way to improve bus services on Uxbridge Road without the difficult narrow bits being a problem. The big 1950s Faycal motorway bits could easily fit busway sections on them, and even some of the other parts of Uxbridge Road are wide enough for improved bus infrastructure. You could run an almost continuous busway from Uxbridge to Southall, and then a bit more from Southall to Hanwell. This would have a significant positive impact on the reliability and speed of buses, especially at peak times, where we put in a busway. East of Hanwell, the road is significantly narrower and has a lot more side streets, so a proper segregated busway wouldn't be possible here. However, a lot of the slow and annoying parts of this bus corridor are on the narrow eastern section, so putting in a busway on the western section would just be speeding up the bits that are already fast. Putting in normal bus lanes and actually enforcing them properly is one of the big things that the Superloop network is missing. Although trams are really cool, they have specific conditions in which they work well, as with every mode of transport. London doesn't have the wide planned out roads that you see in other cities in Europe. So there aren't exactly a lot of corridors where building a tram would be a genuine improvement over the existing buses.
The main reason that Croydon got its tram was that it had conveniently placed abandoned railway lines nearby, which just isn't the case for most of outer London.
Building busways on some of our wider roads would be an excellent idea. However, it's often the small narrow roads that are the most problematic, and because of that,
properly enforced bus lanes are the solution to pretty much every bus-related problem in London, it seems. Anyway, that's all for today, and I'll see you next time.
How much for a single ticket?
£3.
Go
what now?
yourself.
That's into the map!